What's going on, you guys? One thing the Kundalini showed me, amongst many other things, is that reality is it's not what we think it is. You know, there's a lot of things that are advertised to us a specific way here in this world, and when you pick the pieces apart and look at the fundamental building blocks of what's going on here, we're being sold a bill of goods, folks. Let's just put it that way. We're being lied to on a handful of fronts, especially when it comes to what's going on in our bodies, the potential of our body, what we can experience within our consciousness. So, again, you guys, I could spend hours ranting about Kundalini, my experiences with it, you name it. Now, I don't want to be too repetitive on this channel, and I don't want to bore people, but I just wanted to make a message about how oftentimes the way that we perceive things is incorrect based on limited information that we have. Our senses have been conditioned to only take in a very small percentage of the actual truth of what's going on, and to a large extent this is a byproduct of our evolution. We have had to evolve in a way that limited our entire grasp of reality to the point where we just learned to focus on the basic details in survival. I hope that makes sense. So if you take a creature that has practically no limits, we're limitless, and you throw them into a situation where for hundreds of years they're just focused on survival, or they can barely make ends meet, over time the filtering mechanisms of our awareness and our perception and our senses gets conditioned, and we start to look at reality through a very limited lens, that lens being survival and reproduction. And that's what we've been doing for hundreds of years as a species. So this is done largely through the repositioning of something known as the assemblage point. We've gone over that in the past, and I'm not going to be repetitive in this video. But in layman's terms, the assemblage point is a piece of our energy field that dictates how much of the electromagnetic spectrum our perception can actually engage with. It's like a governor on a vehicle. A governor on a vehicle dictates how fast you can how fast you can drive the vehicle. So my mom's Honda had one. The car could only go to about 105. When the governor was removed, you could excel the limitations of the governor, and now you could go past 105. We have a governor of sorts in our electromagnetic field, in our aura. It's a part of our energy field. It's known as the assemblage point. Shamans have known about this for hundreds and hundreds of years. Don Juan Matus, the Yaqui Indian sorcerer throughout Carlos Castaneda's stories, who teaches Carlos, refers to it as the assemblage point. But there's a multitude of different ways that you could describe this particular part of our energy field. The assemblage point is a really perfect way of describing it, however, because it assembles pieces of information from the world around us and configures it into a readable or manageable script, if that makes sense. So the world that we live in is just pure information, energy. Our perception takes all of that energy, siphons it through the assemblage point, and creates like a manageable script for our senses and our perception based on our current position of the assemblage point. It's a rather difficult thing to explain, folks, but basically in layman's terms, this is a world of energy, and we exist within a vacuum of sorts inside of this energy field known as an aura. It keeps us inside this energy field, this vortex of sorts, but as an isolated unit. So our auric field actually holds all of our molecular components together. It condenses everything. It condenses matter into a vacuum of sorts, but outside of this vacuum, there is something that I've come to call the God grid, it's just basically sacred geometry that's all aware of itself. These filaments and fibers, these bands of light that are what's responsible for creating matter in the material realm. Now our senses can no longer perceive this realm, this geometric grid that holds everything together. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And shamans have known about this for a very long time. There's different names for this, folks. I believe throughout Carlos Castaneda's books, Don Juan Matus refers to this as the eagle's vision, when an individual can actually see the truth. You see, Don Juan, whether he was real or not, knew what was up. He knew that our senses, our awareness had been programmed over time to look at reality through a very specific set of lenses, and those lenses aren't giving us the full truth. So our perception has been designed to trick us, folks. That's the problem here in this matrix. And this is one thing that's really difficult for people to digest, because a lot of people want to believe that they're right. They don't want to believe that the way that they've lived their lives has been incorrect or out of balance. This is an ego complex. People always want to think that they're right. So you come into this world, you're programmed. You are the byproduct of programmed people as well. Those genetics are handed down to you, through your parents. You're brought up in a world that further solidifies your conditioning. And then you grow in this world that feeds your ego. So people that like agree with science and, oh, I agree with the experts, and you know, I've got my degrees and my PhDs. You think you know everything, but you're existing in a world, ladies and gentlemen, where you're using 1% of your potential. How can you know everything when you're only aware of less than 1% of the actual truth? So you can look at a well-seasoned shaman or an alchemist that had never gone to school or gotten any degrees or any of that, and they're far wiser than many of the quote-unquote most, you know, prestigious experts of today's world. We've got to get outside of this idea that book smarts equate to intelligence. Book smarts equate to intellectualism. There's a difference between intellectualism and wisdom. Wisdom, folks, has to do with your understanding of the world and the mechanics that run it. I'm talking about the spiritual mechanics. Understanding how the stock market works, that's not wisdom, that's intelligence. You might be seasoned in a particular field, but that doesn't mean you actually have wisdom. That does not mean that you actually know the mysteries of your human body, the secrets of the absolute, that they are keeping hidden from you, folks.